All right, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks so much for joining us today as we talk a little bit about who we are as an organization, Turn Up, Turn Out, as well as the voting process leading up to the November 2022 midterms that are coming up. My name is Sophie Greenberg. I'm a rising senior here at Michigan studying public policy and Spanish. I'm the president of Turn Up, Turn Out, and I'm really excited to chat with you all today about voting. So, just for a little bit of an introduction about who we are as an organization, TUT is a completely nonpartisan and student led voter engagement organization, which structures its efforts around initiatives focused on registration, education, and turnout. And we also work with other organizations in a coalition across campus. These include the Ginsburg Center for Civic Engagement, as well as the Creative Campus Voting Project, and a few other different organizations and initiatives. And so TUT is made up of a really diverse array of students, from freshmen to PhD candidates, from undergrad and graduate schools, as well as being a tri-campus effort. So we don't only have students from our Ann Arbor campus, but also from our Flint and Dearborn campuses as well. And so kind of within this wide array of membership, there's also a lot of opportunities for leadership. So pretty much if you have something that you're passionate about, a project you want to do within our organization, that is very easily turned into leadership. And so actually a lot of our leadership team members have actually had leadership roles within their first year of joining TUT, myself and some other people on this call included. So it's definitely a really great way to get involved in leadership if that's something that you're interested in, as you're getting involved in different things at Michigan. And although we focus on voting, we also welcome students who are not eligible to vote in the United States. So really, if you're passionate about this at all, we'd love to have you. And we'll talk a little bit more about what we do and the voting process in general. Starting with what it's like to vote as a student. So as you're coming to the University of Michigan, you might be thinking, what do I consider my home, my Ann Arbor address, or is it where I grew up and where I lived before? So when you're voting as a student, you can choose if you want to register at your permanent home address or at your college student address. And so this decision can be made based on a lot of different personal factors, like where you resonate more with the issues or where you think your vote might be more impactful. And then also keeping in mind logistics of, if your permanent home address is in California, you're not, and you really want to vote in person, you're not going to be able to very easily catch a plane on a Tuesday, go vote, and then come back Tuesday night. So where you register is where you vote, or where you're going to get your absentee ballot from. So if you choose to vote from home, you're going to have to make a travel plan or an absentee voting plan. And when I say travel plan, that might mean if you're from 20 minutes outside of Ann Arbor, just planning to drive home for the day or something like that. So if you are choosing to vote in Michigan, it is your choice if you want to vote in person, so going to the polls, or voting by absentee ballot, because Michigan is a no reason absentee state. So if you can't make it to the polls on election day, whether that be a really heavy class schedule or you just don't want to stand in line, you can turn in your ballot early and it will just be counted as every other ballot of the people who go and vote in person. And if you choose to register in Ann Arbor, you can even track your ballot along the way. So see when you mail it, when it arrives, when it's received, all of that. So you're really making sure that your vote is just received the same as anyone who goes to the polls. And this might seem like a pretty big overview of a complex process. So if you have any questions about that, Turn Up, Turn Out is here as a resource, as well as your local election official, whether that be in Ann Arbor or in Wisconsin or wherever. And so there are plenty of people that are more than happy to answer your questions about your specific situations that you have. And I'll turn it over to Rose to talk about registration.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Rose. I'm a junior studying public policy and moral and political philosophy, but here I am the vice president of voter registration. So we're going to walk through the registration process for the November 8th election. So in Michigan, to register to vote, you're going to need both the last 4 digits of your social security number and your Michigan ID if you would like to register online. The online application is pretty easy. You go to mi.gov/vote and fill it out like you would any other form. But let's say that you don't have both of those forms of ID, or for example, you're out of state, so you don't have a Michigan driver's license. In that case, you'll need to register on paper with the one form of ID being the last 4 digits of your social security number. If you're interested in registering in another state, you can use the National Mail Voter Registration Form that's linked in the slides there, or you can go to www.ns nass.org. And this site is the National Association of Secretary of States, and they'll help you go through each one of your individual state processes. Remember that you can register up to and on election day with proof of residency in the state of Michigan, but you want to start thinking about this process early. Speaking of thinking about the process early, you want to start checking your registration up to a month before the election. So even if you're quite sure that you're already registered, just check and make sure that information is correct. You can use that National Association of Secretary of State's website to find that information. If at any point when you're going through the registration process, you need help, come and see us at one of the satellite clerks offices that we'll talk about later, or come see Tut at one of our tabling events. We'll be tabling on National Voter Registration Day, which is September 20th, and we'd love to see you there.
So once you are all registered to vote, you're going to want to move into the stage of preparing to actually go in and vote. And that's kind of where I come in. My name is Josephine. I am the Vice President of Education at Tut. And so what's really important is preparing to vote. And one of the great resources that we have at Tut is 10 Tuesdays. So 10 Tuesdays is a great resource to make sure that you're staying on schedule with registering to vote, maybe getting an absentee ballot, and researching your ballot to make sure you're ready to vote. So if you follow us on either of our social medias on Instagram or on Facebook, we'll make sure that you stay up to date and on schedule so you don't miss any of those important steps. So preparing for voting, it's really important to know ahead of time what's on the ballot so that you can decide who you're going to vote for, and it just de-stresses the whole process. In November, voters in Michigan are going to vote on a bunch of different offices, including members of Congress, statewide offices like the governor and the attorney general, and then as well as the Congress in DC, you'll also be voting on representation in the Michigan legislature. So there's also elections on local judges, and there's also going to be some elections on ballot initiatives, including issues like term limits and reproductive health. So you can get all of the specific information on what and who is going to be on your ballot through your state's election website, which will provide you with a sample ballot by the end of September. So make sure you check on that around the end of September, beginning of October, to make sure you know what's going to be on your ballot. Another great resource is Dinners for Democracy. If you're interested in learning more about the issues that you care most about and how those issues relate back to voting, Dinners for Democracy are nonpartisan presentations and discussions on all of these issues, including, but not limited to, reproductive health, gun policy, climate change, and many more. And that'll help you understand how your vote can impact all of these issues. Plus, you'll receive free food for attending. You get a gift card. So you can sign up for these on a website called Sessions through U of M Student Life.
And so after you've been registered to vote, after you've done all your research and found out who you want to vote for in this upcoming election, the important thing is actually turning out to vote. So that's where I come in. My name is Leah. I am the Vice President of Turnout for Up Turnout. And so here's a little bit about how to vote in November. So keep in mind that you can vote absentee or in person, like Sophie described earlier. And so voting in person means finding your polling place through the Michigan Voter Information Center, going to that polling place when the polls are open that day, which will be from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., and then just voting as you would. Voting absentee is a little bit different. That means going to your clerk's office and requesting an absentee ballot or requesting one by mail. and then returning it to the clerk's office or an official drop box no later than 8 p.m. on election day. So nobody is allowed to vote after 8 p.m. That is either in person or absentee. But as long as you get either way of that voting process in by then, your vote will count in this election. So a little bit more about absentee voting. If you are going to mail a request for an absentee ballot, it's best to do that before 5 p.m. a week before the election. This is to ensure that the post office has all the time that they need to get you your request and then to get that request back to the clerk's office so that the clerk's office can send you an absentee ballot. And that takes a lot of time. And during the election season, the post office can get pretty backed up. So you want to allow at least a week for that process to happen. If you are requesting an absentee ballot in person, you'll want to do that before 4 p.m. the day before the election. So you cannot request your absentee ballot on the day of the election. You can only do that before 4 p.m. the day before. And so if you're voting absentee out of state, you'll actually want to check your Secretary of State's website for election deadlines. Election laws are different in every state, and that means that election deadlines are different in every state. So if you are coming from out of state and you're choosing to vote back home by absentee, you want to just check your own Secretary of State's website. And as Sophie mentioned before, also you can track your absentee ballot. And you'll do this through your state's voter information portal. We have a few different links on this slide for where you can do that for Michigan or for other states. And if you're having trouble with either of those links, you can always just contact your local election official and they'll help you out with any questions that you may have, including how to track your ballot. And the last thing that we want to talk about with voting in November is that when you are voting in person in Michigan, photo ID is requested of you. So this can be a Michigan driver's license or a passport. But one really important thing to note that when you are a student at U of M is that your M card is actually a valid form of identification. So if you are choosing to register in Ann Arbor, when you go to vote at the polls, you can bring that M card with you as your valid form of ID. When you are registering to vote, though, you will need your social security number or your driver's license. Your M card is not valid to register to vote, but it is valid to vote in person.
So to touch a little bit more on the satellite clerks offices that Rose briefly mentioned earlier, on the University of Michigan campus, on Central Campus and North Campus, we're going to have 2 satellite clerks offices, which are pretty much an extension of the Ann Arbor City Clerk's office. So any voting related things that you would go to do at the Ann Arbor City Clerk's office, you can do in a more students focused centralized location without long lines on both Central and North Campus. And so these areas are going to be good for registration, requesting absentee ballots, turning in your ballot, or just asking general voting information. This is especially good if you have a situation that's a little bit more complex than something you can just easily Google. You have a more personal thing. It's really great because there's going to be volunteers as well as clerk staff that are there to answer those questions for you and just have a conversation about it. And so some things to bring if you're hopefully thinking about using one of these offices as we get closer to the dates that they open, could be if you're going to be registering, your registration ID, so knowledge of the last 4 digits of your social security number, a voter photo ID is requested. And if you are planning to register within 15 days before the election, if you procrastinate a little bit, which is totally understandable, you're going to want to bring with you a proof of residency, which could look like a piece of mail that has your name on it, or could also be found in Wolverine Access. If you are in the situation where you want help finding it in Wolverine Access, you can send us a quick email. We'll make sure that our email is out in the chat and we can help you easily find that on Wolverine Access. And so, like I said, there's gonna be one on Central and North Campus. So whether you are an engineer in Bursley or an LSA in South Quad, you'll have one really close to you. So one is housed at the University of Michigan Museum of Art, or the UMA, which will be opening September 27th, and then opening a little bit later is going to be our North Campus location, the Judasat Gallery, which is opening October 12th. And as you can see from the hours on the screen, they're pretty flexible. There's hopefully some hours in there that will work for you. It should be a pretty quick process when you choose to go in. And both of these offices are going to be open until the polls close on election day. So if there's something that you weren't able to get done before election day, those will be open right through it and might have a smaller line than the central clerk's office. So I really recommend checking it out, even if you're not using it for voting purposes, but just to kind of see ask some questions, pick up some freebies, things like that. So hopefully we'll see some of you there in the coming weeks. And so if you are interested in what we've been talking about more than just kind of as general information, but as something that you might be interested in helping us kind of get the word out to students and help students, we would love to have you join Up Turnout to help with our different initiatives. Our email is on the screen. We'll also make sure it's sent out in the chat to you all. But you can send us an email. We'll usually respond within 24 hours, whether that's a question about the voting process or hopefully an inquiry to kind of want to join us in some of our different initiatives we have here. And beyond Up Turnout, there are also a lot of ways to get involved in a nonpartisan or partisan, if you're interested, way. So if you want to volunteer as a poll worker, an election inspector, or with some outside organization, you could contact your local clerk, the ACLU, the League of Women Voters, or even your local political party organization. So there's so many ways to get involved with this election. And we would love to see you in touch if this is something that you think that you might be interested in. And so now I'm going to turn it over to you all. I think you're able to use the Q&A section. Oh, I see that there's already been a question asked and answered. And we just got a new one. So as for the question that just came in of the voting locations within walking distance of campus, I'm not sure. Logan, looks like you're typing an answer, so I don't want to speak over you. If you want to just maybe say it out loud.
Sure. So there are voting locations on the Ann Arbor campus for sure. The Ann Arbor City Clerk has a student-focused website that has the precinct numbers and your polling place listed specifically. And some of these polling places on the Ann Arbor campus include the Union, the League, Pierpont Commons. There's a polling place just off of the athletic part of campus. And so there are definitely voting campuses on the Ann Arbor campus. I'm less familiar with the Flint and Dearborn campuses, but I suspect that there are polling places either on or close to those campuses as well. And then for the out-of-state students who want to register in Michigan, the rule in Michigan is that you need to have established residency by the time of the election when you want to register in Michigan. So what that means for you is once you move in to your student housing, if that's on campus, off campus, whatever, you can register. You can register by paper if you're an out-of-state student. If you do get a Michigan driver's license, you can also register online after you've done that. You don't have to wait 30 days before you register. You can register basically immediately once you move in. But you should wait until you move in and your address is established before you register.
It looks like the questions are starting to cool down. If you're currently typing one, please still send it. But as we're waiting for those last questions, we have a few last minute reminders that we can go over. So elections are administered at the local level. So more than looking at kind of national resources, your local election official and your local drop boxes are really great resources to help you find information and also to get your vote. If you're doing an absentee, you want to use a local drop box. M cards will work as voter ID in Michigan, but you can't use them when you are registering to vote. So you're going to need the last four digits of your social security number or your Michigan driver's license. And you cannot request an absentee ballot on election day. You will need to go vote at your polling place unless you are going to be registering to vote at the clerk's office. And so also, if you are from a state that automatically mails ballots, be sure to cancel that ballot before you register and vote in Michigan. So if you're from out of state and you plan on switching your registration or registering for the first time in Michigan, it might be a good idea to just kind of check in on the laws that you have in your state and then check on how those laws compare and contrast to those in Michigan to make sure that a situation like this doesn't occur. And I see we just got a question. Does registration in Michigan automatically cancel registration in your home state? So no, it does not. There's no automatic national database that would take one registration away. So it's a good idea to call your local election official. So say you're from Wisconsin and you're registered there, to call them and say, I'm no longer going to be registered here. I'm going to register in Michigan. If you don't do that, it's not like something really bad is going to happen, or it's, anything like that. Just don't vote in 2 states. But a little bit more effort to call and cancel your registration if you plan on registering in Michigan is definitely a good idea. So I'm not seeing any other questions, but if there are any that come up, or if you are watching this in the future on YouTube and you have any questions that we can't answer live, definitely send us an email at voterregquestions@umich.edu. Talk to your local election official, or also go to our website, which is govote.umich.edu. That TUT, as well as some other organizations on campus, share that website and have some great resources. And also keep an eye out for our 10 Tuesdays plan for a step-by-step guide to voting in Michigan on the November election, all of the weeks leading up to the election, which is in about 10 weeks after school starts. So thank you so much for coming out. Here's some other great helpful links for city clerk, for Washtenaw County elections, and for other states. Hopefully we will talk to you soon if any questions come up or you're interested in getting involved. And thank you again for taking some time out of your Thursday, I think, to come and talk to us about voting.